Entire life in 2 minutes, Hawksley Workman. You recorded this record back home in Huntsville, so it is kind of a full circle for you. But take me back to that early studio you built with the little mic and the tape decks and all that.
My brother and I were Lego obsessed when we were kids, you know. And when it was too cold to ride bicycles, we would Lego away, and I would build studios out of Lego and just dream of like having a studio. And then
did you base it on any historical studio?
No, nothing historical at all. Just my image, you know, my romantic. The thing is, my dad was a bit of a record collector, and so I would listen to records and look at the covers while they were being played. And some records had, you know, photos of studios, and so I got a few tips. One of the great records was the greatest hits of the Bee Gees was a 3-panel, and I could put it in the carpet and sit in the middle of it and see the Gibb brothers around me. But anyway, so I had a cassette player, 2 cassette players, yeah, and a Radio Shack mixer, and I could sort of flip cassettes, and I actually used my Walkman headphones as microphones.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, sort of.
I wonder how much, you know, listening to music on that level is because you love it, and how much of it is a way for you to be connected to your dad in a way that little boys want to be able to do.
That's interesting. What was neat, my dad was a drummer, and that's really my main instrument. And for a lot of, when I was a kid, the drums would stay in the closet for the weekdays, and then my mom would let us take them out on the weekends. And my dad would always buy records on Fridays. It was just standard. And then we would listen to the records, my brother and my dad and I, and we would take turns playing drums to the single on the LP. And just at a certain point, the drums never went away. Yeah. And my dad and my brother and I continued always to play drums along to the records. And we were always embarrassed to play in front of him. And then there was a day where he started to be a little more embarrassed to play in front of us. And those are weird things. Father and son stuff is heavy. But like you say, he was so passionate about records and music and who the drummer was on a record and where it was made and how it was made. I think it can't help but rub off.
You know, I don't spend a lot of time, you know, sometimes album titles, I like, you know, who knows why people name what they are, but there's something that popped into my head. Your record's called Between the Beautifuls. I see that one of 2 ways. You are either between 2 beautifuls.
Yeah.
Or...
always happens to me.
Right. Or you're between the beautifuls the way someone's between jobs. And they're 2 very different places to be.
I think when you're a creative person and somebody who feels very self-critical, you always feel between something. And it's hard to feel like you've arrived. And I think when you're a kid, you get this sense that, I think you're bred to believe that one day you will arrive. You'll go to school, you'll get a job, you've arrived. You'll go and find your niche, and there you'll stay. And I think it's a wild fallacy, because there's only more questions as you get older. There's no more answers.
You never arrive.
You never arrive, and I think it's a bit of a painful thing to find. And when you are constantly loathing and constantly wondering and constantly trying to progress, you never arrive, and it's something you either learn to grow comfortable with, sort of sitting in between, or not. And I think, yeah, betweenness is a place that I don't reckon we understand completely, but we all end up sort of being there.
But I imagine it's still, just because we recognize that that is our reality, does not make it easy to be there.
No, I don't think so. And for me, it's a tricky thing. I think that artists feel like they always need to prove themselves. Definitely right now in the music business, the entertainment business is a youth sort of driven thing. There's a bizarre sort of, it's a competitive league now. And I always want to try and be doing something that's right, evocative, good. And I think to feel like, especially in the music business, that is a bit of a dying, it's a bit of a dying sort, you know. You need to feel that the reason that you get up in the morning is a true reason and a good reason, and that somehow you're contributing something that is necessary and or required. And that's not to make some sort of lofty claim about rock and roll, but it was very important to me. It was important to you. And I think I'm constantly judging myself and constantly thinking of the next thing. And going back to arrival, you never then arrive at a place where, oh, I've done it, thank God, I can sit back.
Do you have a sense of urgency in that? I mean, I know that you've been doing this for a long time. We were looking at some of that early stuff. That's 10-year-old footage, and
oh, it's scary.
It's a long time. Do you feel you have a window to get this done? Dylan, I saw Dylan on 60 Minutes say, I can't write what I used to write. Who's that guy?
Yeah.
Who's that guy that wrote those lyrics? Do you feel like you have a window?
Yeah. It's funny, when I read that, Dylan's autobiography, there was things in there that were really telling of that. And I think you do feel exceptionally vital when you're young, and when I first began songwriting and I first found my voice, I remember that moment to this day. And it's a relationship you go into with songwriting. And like any job, you're falling in love and you're tumbling down this unending hill where it's constantly lusty and orgasmic and wonderful. And
I want to fall down that hill.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great hill.
With me, it's incredible. No, but, well, yeah, but you only make your first record once with no expectation and discovering yourself in these wonderful ways. And then this is sort of unofficially my 9th record, and you're constantly renegotiating your love affair and your relationship with what you do. And I know very well that blissful naivete of that lusty sort of place you're in when you're writing your early stuff. It doesn't last forever, and that is awful. And I think we're given a sense that, you know, people's best work was their early work. What was nice for me over the last few years was, you know, Leonard Cohen's book of poems that he put out a few years back, Neil Young's movie, and Bruce Cockburn's last record. These guys, to me, it was really refreshing to hear what 50, 60, and 70-year-old men had to say. And these people were vital and still contributing. And I got to believe that there's a place for aging and a place for wisdom and a place for growing in pop music.
You know, especially all the artists you mentioned, you can throw Gordon Lightfoot into that mix. I mean, there is a uniquely Canadian thing. You know, Robbie Robertson, even though, you know, his later stuff has been more production. Do you think that in Canada you have an opportunity to grow? I know that you get to do that line. I'm big in Europe, right? I mean, how do they, like in Canada, how are you received versus how you're received elsewhere?
You know what? I was big in Europe, and it's funny, or big in parts of Europe. And what's interesting is I made a record before this one called Treeful of Starling, and it wasn't the right record for the label over there at the time, and my bigness shrank pretty quick because that support just wasn't there. So.
Does it piss you off, man, when you know you've got the audience is probably ready to go on the journey with you, but the business side of it won't even let you have that?
Yeah, it's a drag. It's a drag, and it's funny. It's a very fickle and strange time in the business, and I have to feel blessed that in a time when less and less people have jobs in this business, I still do, and I'm very blessed to have an audience who does stick with me. And I don't really completely understand that. I feel very, very grateful. And I think for a time, I was unaware of how important that was. And now when I'm on the road, I really have a rule with myself that every night on stage, I wake myself up out of that trance and enjoy the fact that there's this connection in this community. And somehow these songs I've written mean something to somebody.
You don't want to miss it, do you?
No.
That's his last question. You, Hawksley Workman's got a record, that's good. Oftentimes it's, hey, Hawksley's worked with this artist. You know, I mean, you heard Serena on a CBC show, you talked to Serena Ryder, and out comes a record. Is there somebody right now that maybe a year from now people are going to know?
Yeah, I just finished producing a record for these kids from Newfoundland called Hey Rosetta, and they're definitely the next big thing. They are virile and exciting and are just... What's great about Newfoundland, and I know we shouldn't talk about it, but it feels very removed. And,
why shouldn't we?
And culturally it feels as vibrant and not congratulatory, but self-supporting as Quebec. And when I was there, there's no feeling of there being a need to be cool. And these guys, what's great about them is their passion and excitement is contained in a package that doesn't need to sort of appear cool or...
Hey, Rosetta.
Yeah, Hey Rosetta.
Good to see you, man.
You too.
Hawksley Workman, everybody. This is his record. It's called Between the Beautifuls, and it is a beautiful record. He is on the road. You can see him across the country. February 28th to March 29th, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, Halifax, St. John's, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, Winnipeg, and more. Go to hawksleyworkman.com and you'll get the full list of dates. Okay, when we return, life and death.